ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We begin tonight with a decision by one man that is likely to affect many aspects of American life for a long time to come. Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall has announced that he will retire. He will be 83 next week. Justice Marshall was not just one vote among 9. He was the court's most forceful liberal voice, the only black in court history, and his departure will give conservatives a formidable majority to affect everything from criminal law to freedom of religion, of speech, and the constitutional right to an abortion. It is the definitive end of an era. Our first report is from our law correspondent, Tim O'Brien.
A message from the Supreme Court at 1 o'clock this afternoon from Justice Marshall to the President. The strenuous demands of court work and its related duties required or expected of a justice appear at this time to be incompatible with my advancing age and medical condition.
I'm saddened by his departure because I know that equal protection under the law will be less protected with his leaving.
He became a legend in the law and a living symbol of the best in American justice. He enriched us all, and the country will be poorer because of his retirement.
Notwithstanding disagreements on specific cases, I think that Justice Marshall made a very unique contribution to the court.
The Supreme Court and the American people will miss Justice Marshall.
The grandson of slaves, Marshall was appointed in 1967 by Lyndon Johnson, the last Democratic president to name anyone to the High Court.
I believe it's the right thing to do, the right time to do it.
Throughout his tenure, Marshall stood ready to throw out criminal convictions if persuaded a trial was unfair or that the police had acted improperly. He opposed the death penalty in all cases. He was a consistent defender of abortion rights.
I think it's up to the woman.
But more than anything else, Marshall will be remembered as a passionate defender of civil rights, a fierce opponent of racial injustice for nearly a quarter of a century on the court. And before, it was lawyer Thurgood Marshall who represented black school children in Brown versus Board of Education, the 1954 Supreme Court decision desegregating the nation's public schools. It was Thurgood Marshall who went personally to Little Rock to see that that ruling was enforced.
We want those children to have a constitutional education, which the Supreme Court said must be on a desegregated basis.
Do you think this country is making progress on race relations, or do you think we've come to some sort of standstill?
Standstill.
Why?
A lack of leadership.
With Marshall's leadership now gone, conservatives are sure to have a lock on the Supreme Court. Those whose causes the justice had championed for so long are already lamenting his departure and the opportunities it will provide the White House to alter the course of the law. Tim O'Brien, ABC News at the Supreme Court. A short while ago, we discussed Justice Marshall's departure with one of the country's prominent Supreme Court observers, Professor Dick Howard of the University of Virginia. Professor Howard, in the life of the court, how significant is this resignation?
Even before Thurgood Marshall stepped down, the liberals on the court were a dwindling band. What Thurgood Marshall's departure means is that the conservative ranks will be even more in control than they've begun already. I think the court that sits next October is going to be a court that will see a kind of conservative activism at play. The conservatives are likely to lay down an agenda which will carry us not only for the next few years, but probably well into the next century.
Justice Marshall once said he intended to serve for life. Do you think he perhaps believed his liberal vote no longer made a difference?
Well, I think the conservatives have now reached the point where they're not simply 5-4, but the 6-3 and 7-2 opinions may well have persuaded Thurgood Marshall that there was no point in simply hanging on to be part of a dissenting remnant.
In terms of the conservative dominance in the court, help us with what you think it'll mean to abortion.
Well, I think the Roe v. Wade 1973 precedent is bound to be severely tested in the next year or two. Until now, there simply has not been a clear majority on the court to throw out Roe v. Wade. One or two justices, O'Connor in particular, have been very cautious about a frontal assault on Roe. It may well be that in the next term or two, we'll either see Roe discarded entirely or at least severely undermined.
Thank you, sir. Professor Howard, he also told us he thought that President Bush would be under pressure to appoint a justice who was conservative, non-controversial, and a black Republican. One man's opinion. Today, the White House was talking only in generalities. Here's ABC's Britt Hume.
The president first heard about Marshall's resignation not from the justice's letter, but from a news report passed on to him by Press Secretary Fitzwater as the president was about to leave for a trip to Capitol Hill. Mr. Bush had not known it was coming, and though he met later in the Oval Office with some of the very staff members and GOP senators who would advise him on a Marshall successor, sources said later the subject came up only in passing. Outside, the president had some kind words for the retiring justice.
In the personal relationship, we feel sad about this, but he served his country well.
Asked what kind of nominee he wanted, the president described someone no one could oppose.
Somebody that believes in the Constitution of the United States, as all 9 of those judges do that are on the court now, and somebody with experience, obviously, and somebody to be able to serve a while.
After the president made David Souter his first court nominee, the White House let it be known that federal appellate judge Edith Jones of Texas had been his second choice and would be first next time. Sources here now, though, say that's not necessarily so, which doesn't mean the conservative Jones won't be named, only that the White House wants to appear to give careful thought to Marshall's successor. Peter?
Britt, to remind our audience, Justice Marshall was the only black to ever serve in the Supreme Court. Is the president expecting pressure to appoint another black American?
You bet he is, Peter. I think that pressure is bound to be forthcoming, and it will be maybe difficult for him to deal with it because at the same time he'll be under intense pressure from conservatives to keep his campaign promise to name conservatives to the court. Conservative black Republicans, there are a few, but they're not a lot.
Okay, Britt, thanks very much. Also still standing by in Washington is our Supreme Court reporter, Tim O'Brien. Tim, your views on this question of abortion. Is the constitutional right to have an abortion a dead issue now?
Quite possibly. I agree with Professor Howard, who said it's in grave trouble, but the betting here is that if Roe versus Wade were to come up for a vote, it would likely be overruled, and quite possibly with votes to spare. Of course, it depends on who the president names to succeed Marshall.
If the president were not to name a conservative, Tim, would it still be overturned in the next session, do you think?
Well, there's a very good chance. It depends if a case could get up here that quickly. Some believe it might take a term or two. But Roe versus Wade has long been in trouble, and this could be the death knell.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you, Tim O'Brien and Britt Hume. In a moment, today's decisions from the court on crime and punishment. On the American agenda tonight, the proposals to help America's poorest children. Is Congress going to pay for them? And a handful of United Nations policemen, the symbols of security for the Kurds in northern Iraq.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.